It's an absolute pleasure to be here, as always, with the TMRN. The TMRN always put on a great day every year. You know, the symposium, and you always pick wonderful themes. And this year is no different, with talking about transparency in trials, which I think probably we're all very interested in. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the initiatives that the HRB has taken or is undertaking in the whole area of changing the culture of research in Ireland. But I suppose before I do that, I just want to introduce you to the HRB. Many of you will be familiar, but for those of you who aren't, just to tell you what we're about, and for those of you who are familiar, then just to give you a little bit of an update. So we are a state agency and funding research, and our mission set out there is to improve people's health and to enhance healthcare delivery. We're not the biggest funding agency in Ireland. Unfortunately, it isn't 2,000 million, June, I wish it was, but it'd be lovely if it was. But that of course belongs to SFI, which would be the larger agency. But on the other hand, we are the only agency that has as its sole remit to support health and the healthcare system through research. So that is clearly very important. A little bit of a quick run through. We're funded by the Department of Health every year. We have a budget of about 44 million, funding portfolio of about 100 million. We do a number of other things apart from supporting research. We do fund research, as we say up there, in clinical health research, population health, health services research, so on, and we fund that in different ways. We also provide an evidence service to support policy in the Department of Health, and we also manage a number of national health information systems, particularly in areas of drugs, disability and mental health, and they're also used to help service planning as well. So that's just to give you an overview of our activities. Now, we've put up here a figure that will be familiar to many of you. We are about just 2 years now into a 5-year strategy, which we published at the beginning of 2016. That encompasses a number of different areas of work. We've divided that up. There's obviously overlap between some of these, but we've divided, broadly speaking, into 3 focus areas and 3 enablers. First focus area is around addressing major health challenges, supporting internationally competitive research. I suppose, if you like, the longer view of research. The second area there, which is obviously very important to today's discussion, which is all about supporting healthcare interventions. And this is the first time in a strategy that the HRB pulled that out as a particular area of activity. We'd invested a lot in building research infrastructure, clinical research infrastructure through our last strategy, but we really wanted this time to make sure that there was a dedicated funding stream for the research community in Ireland to get funding for healthcare interventions. So that's the second focus area. And the third one, very importantly for us, is around supporting the research needs of the Irish health and social care system. So this is also supporting, obviously, excellent research that is competitively peer-reviewed, but it's very much focused specifically on addressing those questions that are important to help us develop our own health service and our own health system. And cutting across all of those, we have a number of enablers around supporting people, which is very important, supporting the infrastructure, and the third one there's enabler C. I won't go into, that's more of an internal one to do with the way the HRB is organised ourselves. But I suppose particularly draw your attention there to enabler B, which is all about developing an enabling environment for research. And that's really a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. I think it's about actually not just the research that we do, but the context in which we do it and how we actually design our research systems, and what our view and our, I suppose, almost our philosophy of research is. Okay, again, just to translate that into, for interest, where we are at the moment, if you look at how that translates into our investment, is about 23% going into that first focus area, which is around the internationally competitive, addressing major health challenges. About 29% at the moment is going into healthcare trials and interventions, quite a significant portion of our budget. About a quarter is going into meeting the needs of the Irish health system, 19% into people, and about 4% going into enabling. That's not really surprising. It's not necessarily even directly a reflection of the importance of these things, but I suppose it's partly where we are in the strategy. For example, if you look at the supporting people bit there, which is around 19%, that will inevitably increase as the strategy rolls out. We have a number of big initiatives coming down the line. And the 4% there going to the enabling part really reflects the fact that a lot of that is policy work. It's not necessarily giving out funding. It's not about necessarily the funding. It is, as I say, about the environment, but it's crucially important. So again, a very, very quick one. Just people always ask, oh, what do you fund? What do you mean by health research? And if you look at our spend by disease area in 2016, not surprising down there at the yellow, I suppose cancer is the largest. That's not surprising. That would be reflective of many funding agencies around the world. And you can see this broad range of diseases that we support, or disease areas. But also you can see down there at the bottom a significant portion, most of it actually goes in what we're calling generic health relevance. So that would include things like population health, health services research. It's research that isn't specifically targeted or doesn't neatly fit into a particular disease area, but is extremely important for our system. Okay, so in the first 2 years, this is what we have achieved. I am somewhat handicapped now because I forgot my glasses, but you can probably see it very well. We've spent over about 55 million research over the last 2 years in terms of awards, and a lot of that, because a significant portion of that, about 80 million, is co-funded. We do a lot of co-funding work. We're supporting about 660 jobs. That is about over 100 awards across the different institutions. We have about 14,000 patients participating in trials at our 3 HRB CRS trials. I suppose, to be fair, we're talking trials and clinical research studies, so in the broadest sense. So you can see there's a huge amount of activity there that we have achieved over the last 2 years, and a huge amount of activity that we've been engaged in, and a lot of good things to show for it. I also just wanted to bring this one up. It'll be familiar to all of you. This really reflects very much an investment, not just over the last 2 years, but an investment over the last decade, where we've been trying to support a coherent and a kind of a coordinated infrastructure for clinical research. And there, over there on the right, you'll see with the in the yellow, we have a number of clinical research facilities, mainly located on the sites of our teaching hospitals. Over on the left in the blue, a number of clinical networks of one kind or another. You can see all the different areas reflected in there. And then in the pink, in the middle, 2 very important supporting infrastructures. The HRB Clinical Research Coordination Ireland, there at the top, which actually supports multi-centre clinical trials across all the different facilities. And there, the other pink piece there, which is also very important, which we have, of course, today, is our TMRN, our Trials Methodology Research Network, which is we see as a fundamental and part of the infrastructure, and really the glue that that helps to hold a lot of this together and provides an incredibly important service to the whole system. Okay, that's just a little gallop through the HRB, but I just wanted to talk very briefly about a couple of things that we're doing at the moment, which I suppose, broadly speaking, will fall under the heading of changing our research culture. So these are, and in no particular order, our PPI, public patient involvement in research, some activities we're engaged in around promoting open science, and then related to that one, a new publishing platform that we are going to be launching next week called HRB Open Research. And as I say, these are really all about the environment and the way we do research. So moving away just from specific projects, and these cut across everything that we do. So first of all, I want to mention a little bit about PPI and public patient involvement. We call this out in our strategy as being an area that's really important. There are other countries that are further ahead, but we needn't beat ourselves up about this. There's lots of countries that aren't as far ahead as us as well, and we're doing quite well on it now. I think we're catching up. But we saw this as really, really important. And when we talk about PPI, we're not talking about research that is carried out with members of the public or with patients. We're not talking about research that's carried out for patients or about patients or about members of the public. It's actually research that involves them in a very meaningful way. So it's including members of the public and patients with the research team, even right back to the design of the research. So if you look all the way along the chain, from the time the design of research right through to research outcomes and how research is disseminated. So we call this out in our strategy, and my colleague in the audience there, Anna Cody, has been leading out on this for the HRB. We've engaged in 2 particular areas of activity. The first is we recognise that if you ask researchers to do this, you actually have to help them and provide the support. A lot of people say, well, I'd like to do this, but I just don't know how to go about it. So in order to help to build capacity, we have funded a number of awards in the universities. We've funded 5 this year in 2017, 350k over 3 years. And that's to support them, to help them and to build capacity in the institutions to actually do or to meaningfully engage public and patients in the research. So overall, the objective there is to support capacity building for high quality PPI in health research in Irish universities. And those awards are co-funded with the Irish Research Council, to give credit to them as well. So the second thing we've been doing under PPI, and this is something of an experiment that we ran this year, was to include members of the public in reviewing research applications. And this often makes researchers, certainly makes scientists feel a little nervous. But for many years now, we have asked researchers when they apply to the HRB to put in a piece into their application form that says, how are you going to involve, what is the PPI component of this? How are you going to involve members of the public or patients in your research? But the truth is we haven't really assessed that, I suppose, ourselves in a very meaningful way, just to be completely honest about it. What we would ask is the scientific panels would come back and maybe they would have some experience in their own countries of how this is done, and they might make comments and say, well, it's not great, or it's okay, but maybe it's not very detailed and so on. So we thought we would take a step to actually to address that, and so we launched a public reviewer pilot this year, which is all about getting people from all walks of life to participate in the review process. And we were absolutely staggered with the response. This little schematic here is what we used in our social media campaign. But we had 750 people around the country expressing interest, almost 400 completing applications. And I think it really is good. It shows the appetite that's out there and the interest that the public have in research. So we did this sort of on a pilot basis. We did it for a number of awards that came in, or applications that came into our investigator-led programme. It didn't influence the scoring in any way. We just wanted to learn from the process. But we plan to roll out that to more schemes in 2018, and we expect to incorporate that more and more as the years go by. So that's our PPI work. The other thing we've been involved in, open science, which, as we say, benefits everybody. And this is something, if you work in the EU, you'll probably say, yes, you can kind of recognise this definition. It's always a little clunky, but the movement to make scientific research, data and dissemination accessible to all levels of an inquiring society, amateur and professional. It sounds very 19th century, but actually it's a very 21st century idea. And the idea is really to open up research more. We see that as having benefit for the research itself, for the researchers, the field, and for society. And some of the ways that we're supporting open science, we're conducting FAIR training for researchers, which is FAIR is data that is findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. So that's all about basically how to manage your data. And again, something like the PPI, where you actually have to put your money where your mouth is and actually train people up. We want to help people with that as well. We're involved with the National Research Integrity Forum. We're very fortunate in that we have the guru of research integrity in one of the European gurus in Maura Heine in the HRB, who has been very heavily involved in this area. That's led by the universities, in fact, and it's all about good practice and an approach to research integrity in Ireland. We've signed up to the All Trials campaign. I think we're going to be hearing a little bit more about that shortly. And we're also involved in the National Open Research Forum. Patricia Clark is one of the co-chairs of that, which again is a cross-departmental, cross-agency forum, which is all about developing an open science agenda for Ireland. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about specifically now was around this open research publishing platform that we are going to be launching next week. And I suppose you'd say, well, why are we going to do that? And what's wrong with publishing as it currently is set out? Well, here's some problems with the current model, and they'll be familiar with you, to you. Very lengthy process, estimated between 150 and 250 days on average. Publishing is very expensive for us, and actually it's a crazy system, really, when you think about it. I mean, the taxpayer pays for the research, the taxpayer then pays the to have the journal published, or the paper published in the journal, and then if we want to get hold of that paper, we have to pay again. Meanwhile, the reviewers are all working for free. I mean, it's a very odd sort of a model, but somebody's making a lot of money out of it. So we saw here Elsevier, for example, had revenue of 25 billion in 2015. This little fellow who's dancing for joy here on the slide must have shares. The cash is rolling in. It's not particularly open, editor decision, journal scope and so on. It's not particularly transparent. You have anonymous peer review, and it's not particularly inclusive in terms of findings and data. So it's very limited in the type of data that you can it's really just publications, as you know, and not other types of data. And, there is a school of thought, and we could probably debate this and have a whole session on this in itself, that it is tied to flawed metrics around impact factor and so on. But I suppose, why does it sustain? It sustains because the system works, we all understand it, and actually probably has a lot of merit. Nevertheless, that's not a good reason for not trying to do something a little different. So what we're trying to do with this open research is to try and challenge the system a little bit, and on the 25th of October, which is next next week we're launching HRB Open Research. We're doing that in partnership with F1000, which is a company that has also worked with the Wellcome Trust and the Gates Foundation. And it's all about supporting publication of a wide range of outputs and supporting a lot faster and supporting it in a way that is open. So overall aim is to make sure that the research is communicated by enabling researchers to publish in an open and an accessible way. So this is the way it will work. Article submission, there should be 7 days turnaround. It is published. You can also publish data, as I say. There's an open peer review process with users able to comment, and then the article can be revised. So this is, very rough in a nutshell, how the process works. And I suppose this is just an example from the Wellcome Trust of a paper that was published in that way. And you can see that the reviewers basically have 3 choices. They can either approve it straight away, they can decline and say that this isn't of good enough quality, or they can approve it subject to revision. And what happens then is that the researcher can go modify and then resubmit. But the point about it is that all of this is open and it is no longer anonymous. So why would HRB researchers want to publish there? Well, first of all, it's fast. Articles can be published within a week. It's very inclusive. You can publish all of your research outputs, and it's open. It fulfills our open access policy requirements. We hope that it'll improve reproducibility. I've been given the 1-minute time there. Data is published alongside the articles, so that's important. It's very transparent, it's open, it's author-driven. And it's easy. The costs are met directly by the HRB. And in this case, we want it to be impact-driven in the sense that the focus is on the inherent value of research. So where we are with this is we've set up a national steering group, and some members I think are here in the audience. We're still refining the details of that launch, but the launch is going live next week on the 25th. And we're going to begin accepting articles. That should actually say January 2018. Apologies for the typo. We'll begin accepting articles in 2018 in January. And the full website will be launched in February 2018. But I suppose the important thing to say about this as well, this is a pilot. We're going to evaluate this after 2 years. Maybe this won't work at all, but we want to give it a go. We want to open up the options for the research community. We want to make some changes. We want to move in the direction of more open and accessible research. So we will keep it under review. We have a national steering committee, and we'll see how we get on with it. And at the end of that time, or as time goes on, and certainly at the end, we'll make a decision on whether or not it has been beneficial. So I'm going to stop at that point. And I suppose really just to sum up, what we're talking about here today is, I suppose, the environment in which we do research, the way we do research. And I suppose, again, to be realistic, it's easy to talk about these things. You can run all these initiatives. They're all very interesting. But at the end of the day, they do make demands on all of us to change the way we work. They put demands on researchers and on research performers, as we call people, to actually change the way they do research. For example, if you're involving members of the patients or members of the public in your research, they put demands on the universities. I mean, one of the reasons the current systems around impact factors and so on endures as it does, because people use that to decide promotions or for a career advancement. So it puts demands on universities to look at how they manage their affairs. And I suppose from our point of view, it puts demands on us as research funders as well to put our money where our mouth is, and I suppose to look at the way we assess research as well. So it's not that any of these things are easy, and changing culture is actually quite difficult and it's very challenging, but it's also extremely interesting, and I hope we'll hear more about the challenges today. Thank you very much.